So we are starting this Tuesday edition of the SportsMax Zone with football. The second round of the CONCACAF qualifiers for the FIFA World Cup 2026 kicking off Wednesday with a number of games being played across the 6 groups of 5, including or excluding World Cup hosts Canada, Mexico and the United States. Let's remind you of how the groups are shaping up. Group A has Antigua and Barbuda, Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, Cuba and Honduras. Group B will see the Bahamas tackling Costa Rica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis and Trinidad and Tobago, 8-time Caribbean champions they are. Group C has Aruba, Barbados, Curacao, Haiti and St. Lucia. Group D has Belize, Guyana, Panama, Montserrat and Nicaragua. The teams in Group E will be the British Virgin Islands, who qualified from the first round phase, Dominica, the Dominican Republic, Guatemala and Jamaica. Group F has Anguilla, another qualifier from the first round, El Salvador, Puerto Rico, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Suriname. And now for the fixtures for Wednesday's matches in these CONCACAF second round qualifiers. Antigua and Barbuda against Bermuda, Suriname facing St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago tackling Grenada, Curacao facing Barbados, Montserrat against Nicaragua, and Guatemala taking on Dominica. It goes without saying how huge an opportunity this is for the nations within the federation to make the World Football Showpiece tournament, but there have been a range of issues impacting many of the participating countries concerning the availability of the overseas-based players for these games, as well as problems of venue availability and quality. It's pretty rare for Caribbean teams to qualify for the FIFA World Cup finals. Only 4 have done it before. 1938 there was Cuba, Haiti in 1974, the Jamaicans made it in 1998, and Trinidad and Tobago in 2006. Now here to share his thoughts ahead of the qualifiers, our football analyst and former TNT defender Brent Sancho, who you may remember played at the 2006 World Cup finals in Germany. Brent, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Always great to have you on the show, sir. Can I ask you first of all, though, about your experience at the 2006 World Cup finals and what that meant to you as a professional footballer from the Caribbean?
It's really career-changing, life-changing. When you look at the sphere that the World Cup puts you in to as a player, it could alter your career in a positive most times, and of course it gives you that opportunity to be seen by the world and playing on the world stage. It's easily, Lance, the most accomplished games I've played, or the most accomplished situation I've had in my life. So I do wish all these teams the best of luck, because it is a tremendous occasion. Of course, it's 6 countries have the possibility from the CONCACAF region. Of course, 3 already being qualified to get to the World Cup. So the opportunity to get to the World Cup is even greater.
Yeah, and you said 6 because the 3 group winners in the final stage will automatically qualify, but the best 2 runners-up will also get into inter-confed playoffs. So there is the possibility of 8 CONCACAF teams playing in a FIFA World Cup, albeit a 42-team final, which we have never seen before.
Yeah, and it does, of course, as I said, give some teams that probably don't normally get into the conversation when you start talking about World Cup, all the opportunity to qualify. As you rightfully mentioned, those playoff spots does have a viable option. Trinidad and Tobago in 2006 utilized that facility to get in with our victory against Bahrain in Bahrain. So you would expect that some of the countries that have been knocking on the door and normally don't come into the conversation when it comes to qualifying out of the CONCACAF region, now very well we feel that they have a chance of doing so.
Yeah, and Brent, let's start with the team most close to your heart, Trinidad and Tobago. Real issues in recent years, TNT, in getting its football back to where we know it has been for decades, which is, a powerhouse status in Caribbean football. But you've got your opener against the Grenadians, who lost a friendly against St. Vincent and the Grenadines recently. Not sure. They did not have their full-strength team, so I don't want to read too much into that result. But how are TNT heading into these World Cup qualifiers?
Well, since the new executive has come in April, there is some quiet optimism with Trinidad and Tobago chances of qualifying. Of course, the road starts here tomorrow in Port of Spain at the Hazy Crawford Stadium. There has been some new faces coming into the lineup, one in particular, Stephen Yates from Canada, who would make his opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago. The team has had some considerable results coming into this. Coach Angaseve have basically settled the squad, and I think he's looking at this opportunity to start. Of course, this format as well, Lance, does give him the opportunity with 2 games now here in in this particular window here in June, and then the next 2 games next year give him the opportunity to still build on the squad. There's a lot of conversation here in Trinidad and Tobago about the immigration laws and naturalization laws and getting possibly the grandparent rule being come into effect. The government has made it known that that is something that they are exploring. And Coach Angaseve has lamented on the fact how important it is to have that scenario where he can have a wider pool of players to choose from. So putting all those factors into place and now focusing in on the game against a Grenada team, interestingly enough, we have not beaten in quite some time. I believe it's 4 or 5. The last 4 or 5 games, we have not had a result against Grenada. So it's not necessarily a straightforward situation. Grenada themselves do have some of their challenges. Several of their overseas-based players are not here in Trinidad and Tobago. So it does make tomorrow's contest a very interesting one.
Yeah, and Trinidad and Tobago coming off that 2-0 win against Guyana. And, you know, Brent, one of the important things we talk about is the crowd support. It will be played at home at the Hasty Crawford Stadium. How important is it that, you know, the Trinis come out and support the Soca Warriors?
Extremely important. It's vital, especially, of course, with the start of the World Cup campaign starting tomorrow, as you rightfully said, and the patrons and the fans need to come out and support the team. The 12th man, we've heard so much of the team mentioning the importance of the 12th man in terms of the visibility of the game has been well out there. It's been all over social media in different spots. And I do feel, Mariah, there seems to be, you know, some level of excitement and anticipation here. I've spoken to several officials at the TTFA, and they do feel that they could expect a big crowd tomorrow at the Hasty Crawford Stadium. There's also a feeling that, of course, that this could be an opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago to qualify for the World Cup as well, because, as we mentioned, the amount of teams that can get into it. Yeah. But of course, it starts tomorrow against Grenada, and the fans will very much know the last outing we had at the Hasty Crawford Stadium was a Legends match, which was well documented and had well over 10,000 people. So you would hope that that is replicated here on Wednesday against Grenada.
Yeah, and a quick comment on the group that, you know, Trinidad and Tobago has been drawn in. That's Group B. They have, of course, Trinidad and Tobago in that group, Costa Rica, Bahamas, St. Kitts and Nevis, and, well, Grenada, which they will play. Your thoughts on the group?
It's a tough group. As I mentioned before, Grenada is a team that Trinidad and Tobago have had their struggles with over the last 4 or 5 outings, not getting a win against them. And you would look at it and think that Costa Rica are odds-and favourites to come out of the group. But so then it leaves the likes of Grenada, St. Kitts and Trinidad and Tobago to battle for that second spot. So that game tomorrow becomes so significant and so important. But as I have alluded to, Grenada have had of course, the unfortunate situation where several of their top overseas players are not here in Trinidad and Tobago for various reasons, which may weaken their squad significantly. They do still have a very talented squad. They have a striker in Lucas Axkin who is and has been a threat in the League 2 level in the UK. And they have an experienced backline that will be backed by the 2 players that have done very, very well in the UK as well. So there is a level of experience there within the Grenada squad, not the full Grenada squad that they probably would have hoped for. And Trinidad and Tobago will pretty much close to full strength. One missing is Tyrese Spicer, his club not allowing him to travel to Trinidad and Tobago, citing that he has a little bit of an injury. But all in all, there is a lot of talent within the Anglo-Sea squad, and they would feel very confident that they could possibly get the result tomorrow.
Yeah, and Britt, you referenced the fact that a lot of the overseas-based professionals aren't available for several of the teams, not just the TNT and Trinidad, the TNT and Grenada matchup, but a situation where, you know, several other teams will be missing some of their star players. The European season, the players who play in Europe would have ended their season, so June probably not a good time to start this stage of World Cup qualifying. Having said that, maybe you could argue that this is the easier part of the playoffs, and maybe these players would become available in the next round when things get tougher, or later on in this round when things get tougher.
Yeah, I think commitment from players from the diaspora has been a recurring theme in the Caribbean. we've seen on several occasions and across several different teams where players may have committed in terms of getting their passport and being naturalized, but at the end of the day, using and citing different reasons for not coming. And then you start to question whether or not there's a genuine commitment to the cause, because at the end of the day, we all understand that in the Caribbean, we not have this sort of setup and capabilities of teams in Europe, and even at the club teams where some of these teams, some of these players come from. So the commitment level is certainly into question, and where, of course, a plethora of players have utilized this June window to have a break from their long season, and they're not here to represent their various countries. So as much as countries are looking at the opportunity of dipping into that diaspora pool, the commitment from those players is seemingly a challenge, because for a coach, of course, trying to narrow down a team or have the right sort of selection to go into these fixtures, so it now becomes a headache. Because players that you may have felt that would be part of your roster going into your first games are not here. So that challenge I've seen throughout several of the teams in the Caribbean, and it now put the focus on some of the local-based players and whether or not they can come up with the goods.
Yeah, and you just pointed out, and as I mentioned earlier on about the long season for many of the players who play in the UK and so on, the end of a season usually means a time for them to get a bit of a holiday, because, a 9-month season of football is pretty tough. So to come out of that and then to be looking at international football a little bit tough. I saw the Reggae Boys squad announced last week, and several of the players are unavailable because of injuries and so on. But you said something just now, Brent, that I want to tackle you on, because for decades I've asked the question about professional players making themselves available for their national teams in the Caribbean, and it has always presented a difficulty, because even if they arrive, I have seen situations where they appear to me to play about 60 or 70%, because they may be having a niggle and don't want to further damage themselves. I see where someone like Naki Wells, who plays for Bristol City, has retired from international football, so he's no longer available for Bermuda. And as a player who had been forced to mix your club duties with international duties, Brent, I think there's something to be said about the Caribbean footballer who has a professional contract and finding a way to make them comfortable enough to give their national teams their best.
Yeah, it's a valid point, Lance, and again, it's a situation that I have seen across several Caribbean countries, and that commitment level, because to get to a World Cup, you need a committed squad. You need a committed base of players that would come game in, game out, will come whenever there is an international window, and not just show up, but also play in the type of characteristics that they would have shown at their club level. And we haven't seen that. We've seen situations where very easily players, of course, don't show up. And you have to also add as well, Lance, that there is pressure from these players from the various clubs. If you look at the Tyrese Spicer situation, where he's been, of course, named in the Anglesey squad, but his coach, of course, in Toronto, have stated the fact that he has a niggle, but he's still playing for Toronto as we speak. So that commitment level and of course, that respect from the clubs and the various places outside of the Caribbean has been really a struggle for a lot of the teams in the Caribbean. And I've heard managers lament on the fact that they're quite sure if these kids were playing for the likes of England or Germany or France, there would be a different sort of commitment towards it. And that is a valid point that I think a lot of countries are now looking directly in their face.
Yeah, and isn't it true, Brent, that although FIFA demands that players have to be released for international matches from their clubs, there are times when Caribbean players go back to their clubs, and it's almost an unwritten rule that they'll spend some time on the bench because the club isn't happy that they had left. And, they won't say that is the reason, but, from my investigation, a lot of times when players make themselves available for their national teams and return to their clubs in the UK and so on, they have a little bit of a difficulty, getting favour from the management.
Yeah, it happens all the time. It happened when I played as well, where you will get that conversation with your manager asking you, why are you going, and do you really need to go to this one? I have faced that personally during my career, and I know players currently as well that face that situation where the manager would chop on it. The clubs are very aware of the FIFA ruling and the FIFA rule that, of course, in that regard, and so they put the pressure directly on the player, because if the player says that they don't want to go, they turn down the international call-up, that presents a very tricky scenario for the FA. So there is pressure, both unwritten and both written, as they say, and for a player, it is a big challenge. As I said, the Caribbean is not looked as a footballing powerhouse, and many of the nations face that challenge when they call in players back. The pressures from the club is definitely there, and it's definitely real.
Yeah, and just a quick look at the roster or the match schedule for Wednesday. Brent, the Bermuda-Antigua and Barbuda match for me is a key one. Bermuda is a team that cannot be underestimated, and although Antigua and Barbuda has seen a rise in their World FIFA rankings in recent years, that appears to be a keenly contested possibility.
Yeah, it'll be a keenly contested one. I think that's the standout game, of course, Trinidad against Grenada, because of the history between the two teams and the fact that Trinidad and Tobago have struggled to get a result against Grenada is another one that stands out. Keep an eye on the Guatemala versus Dominica game, as Dominica are having some challenges to get to Guatemala as well. So keep an eye on that one and what transpires there. But all in all, I think in terms of a result glance, I suspect that most of the results in those games tomorrow would probably go as we would expect. I don't expect too many surprises going into the fixtures tomorrow. But that being said, we've seen a season of football where we've seen a lot of shocks and a lot of surprises. Yeah. And of course, the 2026 World Cup campaign kicks off tomorrow. So don't be surprised if that trend continues.
So you would take Suriname to beat St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Curacao to beat Barbados based on their rankings and recent form? Yeah?
Yeah, I would certainly go down that route, particularly with that Curacao squad that have recruited very heavily from the Dutch leagues. And of course, that Suriname team as well that has recruited heavily from the Dutch league. St. Vincent have started to show signs of improvement. But I think this game against Suriname is too much of a big ask. You're right, that Antigua game against Bermuda is an interesting one. Antigua, another team that deploys several players from the diaspora. Bermuda as well, a team, as you rightfully mentioned, have had indifferent results, but have shown that they can improve. Nicaragua is very difficult at home, playing at that turf, a place that is very difficult to get to. And Montserrat will have to travel well if they're to get anything there. Both teams, of course, meeting in the Nations League. Guatemala, as I said, if that game does come to pass, would feel very comfortable. And of course, the Trinidad and Tobago versus Grenada game will be a keenly contested one. But I do feel that Trinidad and Tobago may feel that they should have the better of the Grenadians.
Okay, Brent, great talking to you on the SportsMax Zone as usual. And we'll be looking closely at what happens in these opening matches on Wednesday. Of course, there are matches to follow later this week as well, which we are going to be looking at. Thanks, Brent.
Have a great one, guys. Take care.
Yeah, and we'll be back with more on the SportsMax Zone after this.